Well, here we go. A bit of a weird feeling as we return for match day 1 of the 23-24 championship season for our usual match day score predictions. Because for the first time since we created this podcast, we are now EFL neutrals when it comes to predictions. Our team Luton Town have won promotion to the Premier League, but as many of you have been very quick to tell us, we'll probably be back in a year. So we better keep an eye on what's going on in the division below. We're going to be doing our usual thing this year. If you're new along, welcome to the channel. We go through every match day in the championship, give our predictions for all the games. You guys get involved down in the comments again. We see who comes out on top each match day. The rules very simple. 3 points for a perfect score, 1 point for a correct outcome. We've got 12 games to get through this weekend, but very quickly, first, before we start, a couple of shameless plugs. We were here last weekend with our full pre-season predictions for promotion, the playoffs and relegation. You can find that video in the eye above. There's one for all of the EFL leagues and the National League as well. So with those, you can see what myself and Craig have predicted for the whole season. We're also going to be continuing our Championship Manager specials, and there's a whole playlist of them for all of the managerial changes during the summer in this league. And of course, we are going to be doing League One matchday predictions. They will be available via YouTube Shorts and on TikTok. And again, that playlist is up in the eye above. A special Luton theme thing coming next week as well, ahead of the first day of the Premier League season. But for now, it is match day 1 in the 2023-24 championship season. And it all gets underway in Yorkshire on Friday night. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus Southampton. Promoted playoff contenders versus Premier League bottom boys last year. How on earth is this one going to go? Well, both have had a managerial change this summer, one expectedly, one maybe not so much, and both have had a little bit of frustration in a transfer window. Southampton at the moment still hanging on to stars, but plenty of them being unsettled in a transfer window. How long are the likes of Ward-Prowse and Lavia going to be there, for example? For Sheffield Wednesday, well, we mentioned it in the pre-season predictions, it's been chaos off the pitch. Managerial changes, a lack of transfer action, the new manager telling fans to be worried. But at least ahead of this video, they have brought in Sean Bernard and finally started to add more depth to the squad. I can actually see this being a pretty tight game. We generally saw that with the Friday night football last year. A lot of low scoring games, a lot of games that perhaps weren't the most entertaining. And with Southampton and Russell Martin, that infamous style of possession football, it's a case of how much of the ball they're going to have and whether or not they're going to give away a silly goal at the back. I could see this being very tight, despite us predicting them at the opposite ends of the table this year. The first day of the season, though, with Southampton still having some of those stars at the club, I would expect Ward-Prowse to start, and I'd expect them just to nick it. I can see them giving away a goal because the way Russell Martin's teams play and the younger defence they've got, I can still see there being some teething issues with that team. I'm going to go for Southampton just to nick it. Wouldn't shock me if it's a draw. I'm not going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline for the very first match. You'd never forgive me. So I'm going to go for 2-1 to Southampton, but I've got an inkling it might be a draw. Let's move on to Saturday, where we have got 8 3 p.m. kickoffs. We start with Blackburn v West Brom, and Blackburn, another club that off the pitch this summer has had a few problems. They've lost star players. We knew Brereton Diaz was going to be going. Kaminski, the keeper, still being linked with my club Luton at the moment. And of course, John Dahl Thomason reportedly close to walking away at times, and not a great deal of transfer work has been getting done. One of the impressive additions, the Icelandic midfielder, has picked up an injury already, so that is a bit of a worry for the early stages of the year. But West Brom aren't in great shape either. Again, financial restrictions are sort of burdening their transfer work a little, but at the time of recording, they've just brought in Josh Maja on a free, and if they can get the best out of him, it could yet be an inspired signing. We talked last year about West Brom having a brilliant championship midfield, adding the likes of Jed Wallace and John Swift, who proved to be very creative at times. But what have you got either side of that? Well, maybe Maja will solve the problem up front. I find this one a really difficult one to predict. I don't think it's going to be the greatest game, but I do think Corberan, if he can get a few more in at West Brom, could have a really good year. There seems to be a bit of an unsettled feel at Blackburn at the moment, so I'm going to go for West Brom to nick it. I'm going to go by 1-0. There's always 1 or 2 surprises on the opening day, but there's very rarely a lot of thrillers. As we say that, we move on to Bristol City v Preston North End. And Preston last season, well, they started by barely scoring or conceding any. Bristol City have actually added some good players this summer. but we tend to say that most years and then not a lot happens. Whether either of these teams have got enough firepower as it stands is probably another question to be answered, because Bristol City still haven't really placed Semenyo and some of those youngsters haven't yet stepped up. Whereas for Preston, you just feel like they've got a mid-table squad at the minute and they probably need a few more to get people inspired. So I can see this being one of the board draws of the weekend, cue the 3-2. But I am going to go for the first 0-0 of the season here, because if there's any game this weekend where it could happen, I feel that that is possibly the one. Let's move on to two sides that had, well, good seasons last year in the end, but one of them finished with calamity. It is Middlesbrough at home to Millwall. Middlesbrough, one of the pre-season promotion favourites after their stunning run following Michael Carrick joining last year. Chuba Akpom is a man who is very sought after. How long will he be at the club? It is the big question. Cameron Archer's goal's not there, of course, but they've still got a quality side. And Millwall, well, we've said it in virtually every episode since. How on earth did they miss out on the playoffs? They were there with 45 minutes to go. They have upgraded the squad. They've added a bit of firepower in Nisbet. Brian adds a bit of quality at fullback. But away from Middlesbrough, are they going to take the Coventry blueprint? Because it's something we mentioned in predictions. I feel we're going to see it a bit more this year now. The way Coventry set up in that semi-final, Borough couldn't break them down. It's a bit of a tepid display from them in the end. And I wonder if Millwall will take inspiration from that. And Middlesbrough are going to have to break down a lot of deeper defences this year. If they do, this could be a very interesting game. Again, I'm not sure it's going to be a big scoring one. And I'm actually going to sit on the fence for this game. For the first time this season, and it's only taken 4 games, I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. If Borough get flying, they could score 3 or 4, but I'm going to go for 1 apiece. Let's move on to a game with the home side who I surprised people by predicting for promotion this year. It is Norwich City versus Hull City. And this game is going to be pretty interesting because Norwich signed early, signed a lot of experienced Championship players, and they have still got the core of that squad that was expected to do well last year. A lot of talk about Max Aarons. Is he still going to be at the club? Could he be at Southampton, the Friday night side? We've seen a few links suggesting that over the last week or so. But for Hull City, very solid under Leon Rossignol after that dodgy start last season. The question is, will he play entertaining enough football to get the owner on board? But for now, I can see this being another tight game. Again, it feels sad to predict low scores, but you don't get many thrillers on the opening day. So I'm going to go for Norwich City to win it. I do think they're going to have a strong season, but I'm not sure it's going to be a free-flowing start. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Norwich win. I'm not confident there's going to be that much in it. But we've mentioned the transfer window has been a lot slower this year because of what's happening in the Premier League and with Saudi. So we know it's going to take a while for these squads to get into full flow. So for now, a Norwich victory. But again, it's so hard to predict. I hate matchday 1 predictions. Let me just stick that out there. Please don't get upset with me. I know you've all seen your sides in pre-season. You've all got that optimism. This is an impossible job. Just give me yours and see if you can beat me in the comments. We move on to a club that was promoted last year with 100 points in the bank. And they play a side that just survived with the miracle of Neil Warnock, who stays for another year. It is Plymouth Argyle versus Huddersfield Town. And of course, Neil Warnock is a massive fan of Plymouth and what Schumacher is doing there. So this is going to make it a very interesting occasion. Plymouth come up with momentum and a lot of hungry young players, but maybe not quite the quality that some people were expecting. There's a bit of a mixed bag between those suggesting they're going to be in big trouble and those who think, well, actually, the momentum's going to get them to lower mid-table and comfortable. For Huddersfield, it's a little bit different, isn't it? Because financial restrictions and after the takeover, stability becomes the key. It's about being safe this year without too many additions to the squad. I'd expect to see late additions on loans and frees, but at the moment, there's not a great deal going on at Huddersfield Town. Tom Edwards, the latest to come in on loan from Stoke, a player who showed promise years ago, but has never quite reached that consistent, regular first-team standard. And now the job for Neil Warnock is to keep them away from danger again. I actually feel this is a real difficult opening day, and Plymouth could well have a good start to the season. I'm going to go for them to nick this game because I think Huddersfield are going to have to try and sit in a bit, and you might have to wait 6 or 8 weeks to see the best of them. I'm going to go for Plymouth to nick it. I think the momentum may carry them the first month or so. I'm going to go for them to win by 2-1 and Huddersfield to fall to defeat on the road on the first day of the Championship season. We move on to two sides that finished in the bottom half last season but will have very different opinions on that success. because Stoke City are hosting Rotherham. And Rotherham are geared up for another tough season according to most pundits, and both of us thought they'd struggle this year as well. Whereas Stoke City, you've got to whisper it quietly here because Stoke have disappointed many a year before. I really like what they've done in the transfer window. Outgo a lot of the old guard, a lot of those experienced heads, but the big news this summer is a younger squad, a hungrier squad, one that looks a bit more like an Alex Neil team. And if he can get them up to speed quickly enough, and they're not playing too much catch-up, I could see Stoke even having an outside run at the playoffs. I did think about it. One or two in the pre-season predictions comments were bolder than me and said they'd get in, but I do think they're going to break the top half this year. Rotherham, of course, rocked by the loss of Ogbene, but just after we recorded our predictions, in comes Fred Onyedinma from our club Luton Town. Not quite as consistent on paper. If they get him going, you're going to see some real quality. For Stoke, I just really like what they're doing. Wesley, the latest in from Aston Villa. Just a real mix of solidity, technical ability and physicality as well. I feel they're going to have a good season, but the question again becomes, will they settle quickly? Because at the end of last season, they had 7 or 8 players contracted. They've rebuilt the whole squad, and I feel it could take a while. But Stoke have got to improve their home form eventually. Rotherham weren't great on the road last season, so I am going to go for Stoke to nick this one. I'm going to go by 2-0. But again, there's always a surprise on the opening day, and this one has every chance of being one as well. Let's move on to Swansea versus Birmingham, the penultimate Saturday afternoon game. A game between two sides that have had a lot of change this summer. Swansea in the dugout and of course a star player taken with Russell Martin to Southampton. For Birmingham, another side like Stoke that I really like what they've done. Talif Chong moves on to Luton, but they've brought 4 or 5 really good young hungry players in, and they're another side that I feel could push the top half. They've got the takeover done. St Andrews should be fully open before the midway point of the season. And we've seen many a time before that away from home they had to be very compact last year. I just wonder if they're going to open up a little and be more expansive. For Swansea, we're probably not going to see quite the degree of total football we got under Russell Martin. Michael Duff does have a bit of a mixed approach, has played good football at Barnsley, has played direct football with the long throw tactic at Cheltenham as well. But I think we're going to see a bit of a blend here. They're going to be in for a tough season on the pitch, but I think they can still be solid with the signing so far. I do really trust Michael Duff as a coach. I think he's a really good addition. And as we record this, they've brought in a centre forward from France as well. So they are looking like they're proactively planning for Joel Pirro's departure. For this game, I think it's quite tricky. And it's one where it's very easy to sit on the fence. You could easily make a case for it going a goal either way. But you've got to chuck in a Championship's favourite scoreline every now and then. This one is going to be that one for me. And I'm going to go for 1 goal apiece. The final game on Saturday afternoon is Watford v QPR. It is strange that no one is talking about Watford for promotion. Valérien Ismaël is a good coach. They've got a lot of the big stars and the big egos out of the club that were problematic at times last season. And so far they have added a few good players in. The usual exodus of players to Udinese to balance the books has worked out, and they sorted their transfer embargo very quickly after it was announced. And they're up against a QPR side who, well, so many people are worried about. They lost 5-0 in the last friendly last week, which sparked a little bit of backlash from fans. They're without any real fit recognised centre-halves at the moment, which is a bit of concern. And although they're starting to bring players in now, the likes of Jack Colback are not going to be fit immediately. So another one of those sides with a lot of turnover, but you're probably not going to see the best of them until September. Will Ainsworth be given that long? We'll wait and see. Of course, we're talking about that against the Watford side. What manager's given time there? I feel they need to get off to a good start. And in this one, although I do think QPR will be alright this season, I feel Watford have to be favourites for it because Queen's Park Rangers just don't have their team ready to go yet. I'm going to go for Watford to win. I'm going to go for 3-1. I can see it being a pretty comfortable afternoon for the Hornets, but I still don't think they make the top 6 this year. Let's move on to Sunday, where we've got a triple header starting with 2 relegated sides in home action. The first of those is at 12 PM midday. It is Leicester City versus Coventry City. Coventry lost the playoff final to Luton in May. Of course, we were there and supporting the other side, but what a season Coventry had. And again, they've rebuilt well. They've lost Gyökeres. We knew that was going to happen. They've released 5 or 6 as well. But they've brought in good, solid Championship signings. They moved very quickly to get Ellis Sims, who showed glimpses at Sunderland, but perhaps wasn't that consistent. But already a bit of a sense of a partnership with Matt Godden. and a few more players coming into the club too. For Leicester City, I think we've said what we need to on them. They've got the best side in the Championship on paper. They've got fearsome goal scorers, 3 of them at one end of the pitch. They've added real solidity in defence and in holding midfield. Connor Cody is an England international. Jamie Vardy has been an England international. And we've mentioned many of the other players in between as well, albeit there's a few of them still out injured. The big problem for me is creativity. And we saw what Coventry did against Middlesbrough in that playoff semi-final. Leicester at the moment have not been able to replace the likes of Barnes and Maddison and Tielemans who have moved on. I guess Winks in for Tielemans is fair. But those number 10 positions might be the only concern when you're at home against a team that are going to set up fairly compact. I don't see it being a problem in the long term, and I think they'll get people in. But for now, this game is probably a bit too soon for Mavididi, who came in during the week. So I think there might just be a week or two before that settles in. The other big worry I have, which I've mentioned many a time, we did the manager special, is Enzo Maresca. I follow Italian football, and while I know he's probably learnt the lessons and it'll be fine, I cannot wipe that Parma stint from my head. There are so many similarities to the Leicester team he's inherited and the Parma side he had there. I just hope he's learnt, because otherwise it could be a frustrating year. For me, I think this opening day is going to be tricky for Leicester. I don't think it will take them that long to get going after that. I am going to go for Coventry to get a result. They had that awful start last year with loads of games being postponed at home and poor away form as well. But I'm going to bank on them to continue what was a very long unbeaten run at the end of last season. And I'm going to go for them to get a result at Leicester. I'm not sure I'm going to go for them to win it. Do you know what? Screw it. I'm so sorry, Leicester fans, and I won't do it often this season. But Coventry, they get criminally underrated so often. I'm going to go for them to nick this game by 2-1. I think it might be the surprise of the weekend. It's a great game, and I still think Leicester finish above them in the table. But on this occasion, given where the two teams are, just got a funny feeling about it. So I'm going to go for Coventry. And yes, Leicester fans, you can all call me an idiot in next week's predictions. It's fine, don't worry. Just be polite about it. The second game on Sunday is Leeds United versus Cardiff. And although I still fancy Leeds more than the other two relegated clubs, I'm a little bit worried about the amount of players moving on. Max Verber is the latest of them who has moved on to Gladbach, but at home to Cardiff, who, yes, there's been a lot of talk about Ramsey returning and the big front two in Grant and Mate. How often are they going to keep all 3 of those fit? And they haven't done a great deal to the rest of the team. Gutas is a decent defender. We know what Errol Balut's going to do. He's going to be compact. He's going to be hard to beat. They're going to set up fairly defensively. It was the criticism he got a lot when he moved to bigger clubs in Turkey. And we know that Cardiff have not changed much of that spine from the team that really struggled last year. So as much as there's a lot of talk about the attacking talent, and Leeds' defence is a problem, so those two things could level out. I do feel Leeds will have too much in this game. They've still got stars at the club like Sinisterra, like Nonto. You've got Cody Drame, who was with us at Luton last year, was Player of the Year at Cardiff before in a loan spell. And you also look at a solid goalkeeper addition in Carl Darlow, Liam Cooper if they can actually keep him fit this year. They've got some real talent in that team. Ethan Ampadu has come in to add a bit of bite in that midfield as well. Probably will play that Calvin Phillips role of 2 or 3 years ago. I just think Leeds have too much. Cardiff, I hope they can keep 2 or 3 of those fit and have a real go this season. But I just worry about them a little. I'm going to go for Leeds to win it. Cardiff have been fairly good defensively at times last year. So I'm not going to go for a wild score, but I am going to go for 3-1 again. And I'll be at Leeds Shrewsbury midweek, so I'll look forward to seeing how they get on in that one. The final game of the match day is an absolutely brilliant game. Sunderland, last year's playoff semi-finalist, against Ipswich Town, the new boys who have come up from League One with the best defensive record, over 100 goals scored, and a lot of expectation, which I personally don't think they'll be able to quite live up to. I really like Ipswich going all the way back to that 00-01 season when I first started following football. And I really like the way they played last year. They're a fabulous side to watch. But we're talking about an expectation to get to the top 6 or 7, which I'm not sure whether it's because Sunderland did it last year that it's assumed to be easier. But this is a really strong championship. You look at those sides who failed to get in there last year. Most of them have improved. But if Ipswich can keep playing the same way, they will be absolutely fine. They will be comfortable in the middle. And then you never know if they can make a little run for it. Away to Sunderland's not an ideal start. Yes, they've not managed to get Amad Diallo back yet. Yes, there's 1 or 2 other players linked with big moves away. However, We are talking about a side that played most of last season without its main centre forward, a lot of the end of the season without any centre halves fit, and still got in the playoffs and made a scrap of it. If they can keep Ross Stewart fit, it will change their form at home. We didn't expect Sunderland to be more of a threat on the road last year, but the way their team worked out, that's just how it happened in the end. If they can keep Ross Stewart fit, it gives them a sort of different dimension at home rather than just relying on that fluent counter-attack out wide. So it gives them a focal point. It allows them to hold the ball in attacking areas a bit more, and I feel it does give them a threat. I really don't know what to predict for this opening day because Ipswich have come up with so much momentum. They've signed a couple of good additions. I feel Sunderland have as well, and they're a squad that are in a really good place with Tony Mowbray, who's a great coach of young players. Bit of an Ipswich legend too, of course. Oh, it's the toughest one of the weekend for me to finish on. I'm so tempted to sit on the fence and go for a Championship's favourite scoreline. But there's part of me on a Sunday night that just thinks Sunderland's going to nick it. I think Ipswich are going to be a great addition to the league this year, a real joy to watch. But Sunderland was so strong last year. I saw that as a Luton fan myself in that playoff semi-final. And I'm going to go for them to nick it by 2-1. Another one that could easily be a draw. So let's have a quick recap of my predictions for the most impossible week to predict in the most impossible league to predict in the world. What a start to the season. For match day 1, I have gone for home wins for the likes of Plymouth coming up from League 1. For Stoke City at home to Rotherham, who I'm expecting to have a better year. And Watford at home to QPR, if you wanted proof as a Luton fan that I am not biased on here. Probably my standout news is a surprise defeat for Leicester at home to Coventry. I've just got a funny feeling about that game, but Leicester, no doubt about it, will be up there this season. And the other two promoted sides, I've gone to get narrow victories, with Southampton winning in Sheffield at Wednesday and Leeds United beating Cardiff City. But those are just my predictions for match day 1. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. Make sure you give us your predictions for this weekend's action as well. As of course, as with last season, if you beat my score, you will get a shout out in a recap at the start of the next episode. But a massive thank you for watching as we return for a new season. If you did enjoy this one, please do put a thumbs up on it. We're very relaxed here, there's no clickbait and I'm not trying to wind people up. So hopefully we'll have a good season down in the comments. As I mentioned, you can find all of the links up in the eye above to our pre-season predictions for this league and the rest of the EFL and National League, in addition to all the manager specials from the summer and much more as well. We'll be back next week for match day 2 and to recap the scores from this weekend, in addition to our first focus on Luton this season for a Premier League debut at Brighton. I hope you're looking forward to all of that, and I'll see you here again next week.